Hello, good evening, Dhananjay.
Very good evening, sir. Very good evening, sir.
Good evening.
We'll
start in 10 minutes.
Yes, sir. We'll start in 10 minutes, sir. Nice connecting with you, sir.
Yeah, pleasure. So, how long the session is going to be?
It is planned for 1.5 hours, sir. It's not a that is up to 7:30 sort of thing, sir.
Up to 7:30. Okay.
6 to 7:30, sir. It's flexible, sir. Depending upon it.
Okay. So we can leave some time for question and answers.
Sure, sir.
So, and so how many people are participating?
We have around 50 participants, sir.
Okay.
From various universities and institutions all over India, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have ranging from Jharkhand, Central University of Jharkhand to Tamil Nadu universities.
Right.
All finance enthusiasts and some corporate people from stock markets like securities broking companies.
Oh, okay. I see.
So they are also interested to have a perspective of academic perspective on financial markets.
But I think that they may not benefit from my talk.
Yeah, but there's a very minority, sir. 2 or 3 people are there.
Because this is mainly about research, publishing in good quality journals. That's the objective of this talk. So I think maybe practitioners may not benefit from that.
True, sir. Anyway, they will have some high-level view of finance from your this.
Sure. And the remaining people, they're all academics working in the universities. Yeah.
Working in the universities, teaching subjects like this financial markets.
Right. So you're in Nellore now? Or?
Yes, sir. I'm right now in Nellore, sir. I've seen your post. I think you are in Netherlands right now.
I'm in Netherlands right now. Yes. So I'll be here. Until summer. And so, how is the college doing?
It's nice, sir. Actually, we are a bit because it is a semi-urban area where in a slow pace.
Right.
But we have become autonomous and sort of achieved some milestones.
I see. Great. So you are a university now, or?
No, sir. It is one step below university.
I see.
It is autonomous college.
I see. Yeah, great. And so the placements wise, students are happy with the placements?
Mostly the engineering people get a lot of placements, sir, because being a standardized tests and all, whereas our this MBA course requires some sort of cosmopolitan culture, something like that. It's a bit less, but we're trying to catch up.
I see.
At least in the finance area, sir, we are introducing various value-added courses or certifications from NISM, this NSC certification.
Yes, yeah.
So that their employability will be increased, sir.
Right. So the engineering students, they do internships.
Yes, sir. Very much they go for a lot of the technology companies, and they are putting the standardized tests and recruiting, sir. A lot of recruitment, Wipro, Infosys, TCS. There is a huge hunger for new talent in the IT companies.
I see. So are they learning blockchain, or you're teaching blockchain for engineering students? Or?
Engineering right now, no, sir. We are planning to introduce, because our is a autonomous college.
Right.
We can introduce new. We can go to curriculum changes. In fact, in the near future, we are conducting an international conference on AI, ML, DL, and data science, sir.
Good.
So that way, these new innovations we are trying to incorporate in that curriculum, sir.
Yeah. So we are having a big research wing now, mainly working on AI, ML, and blockchain. and we have started a startup incubated at the university.
Great, sir.
And we are giving training and also taking students as interns to train them in blockchain area. So I think if any students are interested in that area, I think we'll be happy to guide them.
Great, sir. Great, sir. Because you are very much your core competence in those areas. Very nice, sir. Very nice.
Yeah, I think someone just texted Mr. Bhanuchandar.
Yes, sir. And some people they are from University of Hyderabad also, one of the people.
Nice.
Good morning. Good evening, Josna madam. Can you put the welcome slide?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, madam. Good evening, madam.
Good evening, madam. Good evening.
We will start in 1 or 2 minutes once
Sure.
everything stabilizes.
Yeah.
Participants, please mute your mic. Dear participants, please mute your mic.
So, Josna madam, are we good to go? I think we'll,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
good evening, everybody. With the great happiness and pride, I invite all of you to this FDP on India's financial markets, teaching, practice, and research perspectives. So now, I just request our Vani madam to say a few words. Then
Thank you, sir. Hearty welcome to all for our Narayana Engineering College, our department MBA, conduct the FDP program for 1 week on India's financial markets. Most welcome to Professor Vijay Bhaskar sir and all participants. I hope you utilize this opportunity for development of our skills.
I request our FDP coordinator, Josna madam, to say a few words.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Good evening to one and all who are all presented on this online platform. Once again, I welcome you all the participants to this FDP, which is planned for 1 week. That is from 28th March to April 2nd, 2022. Now, I would like to explain the main objective of our today's FDP program is create an awareness about India's financial markets and to inculcate the knowledge about the India's equities markets and portfolio design with Markowitz model, India's derivatives markets, essentials econometrics for research in finance, essentials of behavioral finance, etc. And once again, I welcome all the participants and I hope all the participants will gain some knowledge from this FDP. Definitely all the participants felt happy of completion of this program. I expect the grand success of this FDP by all your presence for all the days, that is for 1 week. Thank you, sir. Now I request Dr. Dhananjay, sir, to read out the profile of Vijay Bhaskar Marisetti, sir.
Yes, madam. On behalf of all the participants, I warmly welcome Professor Vijay Bhaskar Marisetti, sir. He needs no introduction, and I can say that he is a stalwart in the area of financial markets, financial analytics, and fintech, and blockchain technologies. And he is a full professor at University of Hyderabad and also at University of Twente, Netherlands. So we are very glad to have such a person of international repute And his background is he has worked with all top universities like Indian School of Business, IIM Bangalore, Monash University, and he has is a widely traveled and have wide exposure in various areas. And I can say that he's a multifaceted, multi-talented person. And if you see his Facebook or LinkedIn, I request, I urge all of you to follow his Facebook. Enormous amount of he's exposure to. He's a top class painter and singer, and I can say his cooking skills also extraordinary. If you witness Sir posts and all, and he has a lot of affection for people. I can say he embraces people who comes along his path, and I'm very much happy, blessed to have his, friendship or what you call acquaintances. And I can say that he is very much well-wisher for our Narayana colleges, Narayana group. And we're very much indebted to him for blessing us in many international conferences, FDPs, workshops, webinars, many such. And his intellectual, he has varied interests and varied specializations, I can say. And one more thing I can add is he is very much loved by his students. And all his students he treats as friends. And one more thing I can say that he has beautiful family, blessed with Madam Professor Varsha Madam and our daughter Smriti. It is. I'm very glad, and all of us are here are very much happy to listen to his words. And today's inaugural session, how to publish in high quality finance journals. I can see that his research interests are very much varied, from microfinance to financial markets to various corporate finance. It's always blessing to listen to his lectures and talks and his opinions. Now, without further ado, I request Professor Vijayabhaskar Marshit sir to take over the session, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Dhananjay. It's a very generous and kind introduction. So I've been invited to participate in this faculty development program, aiming to improve the skill base of faculty in the Indian universities. I'm associated with the University of Hyderabad, and I know how we conduct research and how it's very hard living in India and then publishing high quality journals, the hardships that we go through. I think it's very important for us to reflect on how we conduct research and what takes us to high quality journals. How can we increase our quality output in the research space? Because ultimately, if you look at universities, university has got two major portfolios. One portfolio is to create knowledge, and the other portfolio is to disseminate the knowledge. So where I think we disseminate knowledge through teaching, and we create knowledge through research. And most of the times, whatever we create, we eventually disseminate at some point of time in the future. So in other words, creation is always forward-looking, whereas dissemination is a bit backward-looking. So we reflect, we try to understand, and then we come out with more rigorous approach to identify what exactly we have to teach based on what we have created. So universities across the globe engage in both activities, but it varies university to university. Like, if you look at universities in most of the developed nations, their focus is mainly on creating knowledge. And they also focus on disseminating the knowledge or teaching it. But I think creation of knowledge is valued more compared to dissemination of knowledge. So whereas we look at universities, in developing economies, the focus is more on disseminating knowledge than creating knowledge, because I think we have to keep up with the pace. We have to first make sure that people are skilled and they can get employed. So that takes most of our time. Like the reason why we have set up IIM and IITs in India is more to disseminate knowledge than creating knowledge, because we wanted the workforce, good managers, and good engineers who can build the country. So we didn't really think that far in terms of with the value of creating knowledge. I think that has taken a step back, and that legacy has continued over time. If you look at even now, creating knowledge is not that highly rewarded in the Indian universities. Nowadays, IIMs are giving some incentives to faculties to publish, but I think it is still a long way that we have to go to keep up with the kind of research that goes on in developed economies. Right now, I'm in Netherlands, and the research that happens here is relatively more advanced than what I do in the university back in India. So I thought of spending some time for this inaugural session with you all, mainly to discuss and explain, I think, what exactly journals look at us. I think, what do they want from us? How do you publish good quality journals? So where are we lacking? So what exactly we mean by good quality? What are the boundaries of this? How can we define it? So these are the topics that we are going to discuss in today's session. I'll just share my slides. I have a few slides where I'm going to explain how we have to perceive research as. Okay, are my slides visible?
Yes, sir, very much.
Okay, just hold on. So the idea is to how to write high quality research papers. That's the topic here. Then I think before we delve into this area, it's a good idea to know what exactly we mean by research. How do we define research, right? So research, if you look at a dictionary definition of research, research has got to fulfill few components. So especially 4 pillars of research. So unless you fulfill those 4 components, you cannot consider something as research. So the first one is a systematic investigation. The research has to be a systematic investigation. Can anyone in the participants explain what exactly we mean by systematic investigation? What do you think about this word, systematic investigation? Yeah, anyone among the participants? Anyone would like to? Yeah. Can you use your mic?
Yes, they responded in the chat box, sir.
Okay. Chat box. Let me check the chat box.
Or otherwise, shall I read out, sir? Following a scientific or logical process.
So following a scientific or logical process. Someone says literature review. Yeah, what exactly is a scientific process? Someone says identification of a problem. What is a scientific process? When do we call a process a scientific?
When it can be accepted universally, sir?
Sorry?
When it can be accepted universally?
Accepted universally, yes, that's right. But when can something become universally acceptable?
Maybe if I can attempt, sir, that is, we form a hypothesis, try to form a hypothesis and try to reject that hypothesis.
Yeah, but I think when it becomes scientific, like, when it becomes universally acceptable.
when we're able to form a hypothesis and try to test that hypothesis.
Right. So you test the hypothesis and you have some results and you make a conclusion. Would that qualify something to be universally acceptable?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What if someone else has got same hypothesis, they also do the same analysis and they got a different result and they reach a different conclusion?
So, in my view, to be accepted
Yeah.
universally,
Yeah, I can't hear.
In the sense,
Nonsense.
it may be iterative process of discovery.
Right. It has to be iterative process of discovering something. Yeah. So these are all connected to systematic investigation. So something, when we say something is systematic investigation, there is a procedure that everyone can understand and it can be replicated. So in other words, no matter who follows that procedure, they lead to the same outcome. Right. So as long as the procedure is known to everyone, if they can reach to the same outcome, then it is universally acceptable. Right. So this is the first pillar of research. The first pillar of research is you have to make sure that no matter what you do, that has to be that is replicable. No matter who does that. Yeah, Jhansi Reddy. Maybe can you mute your mic, please? Jhansi Reddy. Is Jhansi Reddy there? Yeah, please mute your mic. Yeah. Right. So the systematic investigation is saying that whenever we conduct research, it has to be scientific. What we mean by scientific is that no matter who does that, they have to come to the same conclusion. Right. So then it is universally acceptable. Right. So most of the times when we conduct research, we have to pay extra attention to this word called a systematic investigation, which mainly comes in your section called as methodology or research design. So your methodology is robust enough that no matter who does that, they would reach to the same conclusion. So for any research, because the purpose of research is to contribute to the existing knowledge. So for that to happen, it has to be useful to the society. For that to happen, it has to be universally applicable. And for that to happen, it has to be scientific. What we mean by scientific, it has to be systematic, that anyone who follows the procedure can reach to the same conclusion. Right? So that's the first pillar of research. The second one is materials and sources. Yeah, what exactly we mean by materials and sources? So research should have materials and sources.
The right data.
Data is, it is a material. And there is a source to that material, that where the data is coming from. Right?
Theoretical background, backdrop. That context.
The context. No, I think it's a bit more than context. So materials and sources, as you said, data could be material for conducting research. It could be even physical material. It doesn't have to be data alone. But why do we need this kind of hard material and source? For doing research?
to validate the research, sir?
To validate, no, it's not for validation. It is more for providing evidence. So there is a difference between validation and evidence. In the sense, you need some material information or something that you can trace and find, and this can help in identifying things. It can help in providing evidence. right? So to whatever you're trying to establish, right? So you need some materials and sources for that. So you need some, backing for evidence. Now you have to establish facts. So whatever research you do, you have to establish facts, right? So this is mainly validation part. So you're validating through facts. So you establish facts, like for example, which are nothing but your results. So these results should be facts. In other words, you're not you're not doing any speculation here. You're actually providing facts to validate your hypothesis or validate, whatever the conjecture you had in mind. You're trying to validate through establishing facts. And the last one is the most important one. See, even if you have all the three criteria, someone is raising a hand. Someone is raising a hand here. Someone raised a hand.
Yeah, Banu Chandra.
No. So I don't know. I think basic understanding. Is that what someone said? Yeah. Okay. Now, the last one is the most important one, which is new conclusions. So when we say new conclusions, what we mean by that is no matter what you do as research, I think if you arrive at the same conclusions, you're not adding new knowledge to the existing body of knowledge. So the reason why you have to undertake research, the reason why someone has to read your research work is that they can draw a new conclusion based on that. So that I think they can think in a different direction. They have an alternative direction to look at now, right? So most of the times we fail doing that. The difference between a high quality research paper and a low quality research paper is based on the fourth pillar of research. So most of the time we do not draw new conclusions by conducting research, right? So these four are the most important pillars of research. So whenever you do research, you have to answer all the four questions. Do you have a method which is considered as systematic investigation? Do you have materials and sources? Were you able to establish facts? And were you able to draw new conclusions? Right. So research is defined that way. I think that's a nice way to define research. And these are the boundaries of research. So within that template, we have to see how we're doing our research work. So research is a process, right? So I think this is something similar, right? So it is a systematic process, and you have materials and facts, like evidence, and you're your research work by a logical argument. So always research starts with a question, or resolves a problem, or you want to gain a greater understanding of phenomena, right? So for example, so what's happening to investor behavior during COVID time? So COVID time is a phenomena, right? So and you want to understand, you want to gain a greater understanding how people behave during crisis time. I'm doing some research work with one of my research scholars. We are trying to see how people behave by engaging, on how companies behave by engaging with people during crisis like COVID, especially in fintech space. So we're looking at all the loan apps that have come out in the market, hundreds of loan apps, and we have taken data of millions of reviews given by people, the borrowers who use the loan apps, and we're trying to investigate, how people behave during crisis time, right? So, whether fintech companies exploit more, or whether they try to support people because there is crisis. Because people are very vulnerable. They might have lost their jobs. They may not have income source, and they are quite vulnerable, and they can easily get into loan apps. And loan app can be a trap to them, or loan apps can help them to get out of the crisis. So which one is happening? We are trying to investigate. So the objective of that research is mainly to gain greater understanding of this phenomenon. Now, so the case of resolving a problem. So there might be a problem, and you see the problem, and you want to resolve the problem. That could be research too, right? So it could be a problem that we all face, right? So, for example, a problem could be something like companies are not spending a lot on CSR funds. Right. So companies are supposed to spend a lot on CSR funds, but they're not spending a lot. So government comes out and then imposes a regulation, or companies are not taking many female directors onto their boards. So there is not much gender diversity in the corporate boards. Now, governments are coming and saying that there should be mandatory rule that corporate board should have female directors. That's a problem. And we're trying to understand the problem. Government is trying to resolve the problem. And you want to know what is the efficacy of a government regulation on this. So that's another type of research. Or it could be an answer to a question. So you pose a question because existing answers are not clear in terms of answering the question. And you want to reinvestigate the same thing to find a new answer to the same conclusion, so that you can, to the same question, so that you can reach to a new conclusion. So this could be something like, are some policies in stock markets good or bad? Like, I have done a lot of work on price limits in stock markets, right? So are price limits good? Because some stock markets have price limits, some stock markets do not have price limits. So the question is whether stock markets should have price limits or not. That's a question you ask. Because there are some good things, there are some bad things about price limits, and research is not clear about it, right? So that could be a question. So a research can be a question. You're trying to answer a question, or you're trying to resolve a problem, or you're trying to gain greater understanding of a phenomenon. So any one of these three could be a research. And to do the research, first you start with this question, problem, or you want to gain understanding. So then you try to do a systematic investigation, supported by evidence, and most importantly, supported by a logical argument. So there should be a logical argument. So the most important part of research work is your logical argument, right? That is your contribution to the intellectual capital of research. So your intellectual property in research is mainly your logical argument. A logical argument is also called as hypothesis. So in other words, hypothesis is like an answer to the question that you pose before testing it. So you have already got an answer to the question. You have done your own investigation. You have an answer to the question. And you pose that question, and then you say that this is the probable answer to that question based on my logical arguments, right? So that's what you do. Once you do that, the next part is mainly testing it and validating for everyone's acceptance. So for your own acceptance, you need logical argument. For everyone's acceptance, you need testing and validation, right? So the most important thing for you is answer that you got before testing, right? So that's where you contribute to the knowledge. So the most important part of research is hypothesis. And doing research is a process, right? So we always go through a set of process. There is a process, there is a boundary, conditions within which we operate in research. So you have to investigate within a framework of a set of philosophies. This is also called as theory building. Like, for example, companies are going and investing in capital expenditure. And you want to know whether companies, when they announce that they invest in capital expenditure, let's assume there is an announcement saying that Infosys has opened a new branch in China. What happens to Infosys' stock price?
It can increase, sir. It can increase.
Okay, there is a possibility that it will increase. But what is the theory that you follow to come to that conclusion that it will increase?
is doing a international diversification and it's seeing a bigger market in China, sort of assumptions we make.
No, but see, increase in stock price is based on some finance theory, right?
So can we assume that its cash flows will increase, therefore
Exactly.
a DCF value will go up?
Exactly. So you have a theory called as discounting cash flows, future cash flows, to get the present value, right? So your present value of the stock of a company is nothing but its stock price, right? So you say that because the present value goes up, as future cash flows are going to increase, and also, as you said, due to international diversification strategy, the cost of capital, or the risk of the company, or required rates of return are coming down, or the discount rate will come down. So your denominator is coming down, your numerator is going up. So that increases your present value. Because the present value increases, present value is nothing but the current stock price. The stock price of the company should also increase. So this is the logic that we use to come out with this conclusion that when Infosys announces a capex decision, stock price goes up, right? So we are following a theory, a finance theory, to support that argument. Likewise, finance has got hundreds of theories to support many arguments. Like, for example, agency theory. Agency theory is the guiding force behind all the corporate governance research that goes on, right? So, like, your executive compensation research, right? So your managerial entrenchment research, right? So many other research sources your agency theory. So likewise, you want to value contingent clients, then you have options theory. So we have so many theories that have evolved over time in finance, and we have to use that framework to come out with your hypothesis. So we have to use that knowledge base or theories as the framework to come out with your logical arguments. So that is a process we adopt in research, right? Okay, so there is a procedure for that. There are methods, techniques that have been tested, validated, and reliable. So people have they've established the theories, and you're going to use it. And how you're going to test it is what is called as your methodology. Followed by methodology, then I think you need to come out with a research design that has to be unbiased and objective. So this is very important in research, right? So we should come out with a design that is unbiased and highly objective. Why research has to be unbiased and objective?
Because if it is biased, we may lose that replicability of that research. And
you may lose replicability of research, and your results are mainly to acquire some private benefits. Like, for example, you come out with a research sponsored by a cigarette company and say that smoking cigarettes is not hazardous, right? So that's a biased way you set up your experiment in such a way that to prove that cigarette is not bad. The sampling is done in such a way that to prove that cigarette smoking is not bad. Likewise. Okay, so unbiased research is very important. That's why we always establish in research something called as null hypothesis, right? So null hypothesis is nothing but your unbiased estimate. And unless you reject the null hypothesis, your alternative hypothesis is not validated, right? So that's how you set up research, right? It's important to know what research is not. So it's not just we have to know what is research, but more important thing is to know what is not research. Most of the times we don't know what is not research, right? So we should know the boundaries of what is research and what is not research. So research is not just information gathering. So you acquire a lot of information by reading a lot of articles and you summarize all that. That's not research, right? It's not your referencing skills. It's not information discovery, right? So most of the times when you see low quality papers, they would focus on information discovery. They try to put a lot of existing knowledge into in a specific way and write a paper on that. So I think that is not research. Research is not mere transportation of facts from one location to another. Like, someone has done something in the US market and you do that for Indian market. Again, that is not research unless you validate how your results are going to be different in Indian market compared to the US market at the beginning. So you have to first justify that by doing on the Indian market, although the topic is same, the possible conclusions that I might reach might be quite different from what the existing research is there on the US market. For example, let's assume you are looking at a researcher to understand whether private placements in stock markets are beneficial or not, whether companies have to do private placements or not. Now, let's assume people have done research already in the US and they have reached a conclusion saying that private placements are not a good idea. Because based on the existing evidence in the US market, whichever company has gone for a private placement, they were not that successful. Now, you replicate that work on Indian market without any logic, and you might reach to the same conclusion or a different conclusion, doesn't matter, but you're just replicating it. So that's not research. But you can justify saying that why I need to do this research on Indian market, not on the US market alone. So one reason could be, for example, the organization structures in India are quite different from the US market. Like in India, majority of the firms are owned by family groups. Like if you take 80% of the Indian market cap is owned by family groups. So family group affiliation is one of the major DNA of Indian market, which is not the case in the US market. When you are part of a family group, like for example, we take Tata Group. If you are part of Tata Group, then let's assume you are a company called as Tata Tea in Tata Group. Tata Tea wants to go for a private placement. And we know that there is a hierarchy. There is a theory of, hierarchy in terms of how you have to go for financing, your sources of finance. There is a very well-established theory in finance literature, right? So it's called as pecking order theory. So the pecking order theory says that I think first, always you have to use internal resources because, you don't want to, let's assume the company wants to expand and become big. And for that, they need finances. So as per you, what is the right source of finance?
Maybe a combination of debt and equity, sir.
Okay, so let's assume I give options to you. One is internal finance. The second one is finance from family and friends. And third one is equity. And the fourth one is debt. Now, in this order, which one should be the first source of finance if you want to expand?
If I can conjecture debt.
Debt is why you want to go with debt?
That maybe it gives me tax benefits and it is a cheaper source of capital.
It may not be a cheap source of capital. I think, you still pay a lot of money for debt. See, if debt is the cheap source of capital, you take companies like Apple or Infosys or TCS. Do they have any debt on their balance sheet?
No, it is 100% equity.
Yeah. You see, all the IT companies, they'll have zero debt.
Zero debt.
All the good IT companies. Why do they have zero debt if debt is cheaper?
After they have a lot of internal cash flows, so they have
lots of cash flows on the books, and they prefer investing their internal funds first. Why is that?
Then the internal the reserves are cheaper because
so the cheapest source is your internal funds. The reason is, if you are very strong about this expansion plan, and if you think that there is a lot of value in expanding, you don't want to share this information with anyone. You want to keep this as a private value for your company, and you want to invest your own funds. That is the first cheapest possible source, because you know that if you take this cash that you have and invest somewhere else, that might be giving lower return than your own idea in the company, right? So your own expansion plan would be more valuable than investing anywhere else. That's why you want to invest in the company, right? So if you're really good, and if you're a good manager or good owner of the company, that's how you normally have to look at. Now, followed by that, the second source we looked at is family and friends, let's assume. So which are, I think, very close to you, and you can easily convince them there is no information asymmetry and they believe in you. So hence, I think you want to use that as a source. Then you want to decide whether you want to go for equity or debt in the public markets, right? So this is a normal way we engage in. Now, private placements are mainly equity issued to family and friends or well-known parties, big private equity investors, etc. They get private placements. They won't go for public issues, right? So in the US, there is strong evidence that private placements are not good because I think they're not favorable. Whereas in India, on the other hand, private placements are very common, right? Why India has got more common private placements than the US market? One reason is Indian companies majority of the companies have family group affiliation. So like Tata Tata Motors, Tata Steel, TCS, there are so many companies under Tata umbrella. Now, if a company wants to expand in Tata Group, let's assume that we have seen that Tata Motors acquired Jaguar and so Land Rover. How did they place? Who financed that project? Do you know who financed that expansion of Tata Motors?
Tata Sons or
all Tata companies, chipped in. They have invested in that. That's like a private placement because they know that Tata Motors might benefit and eventually they can help them at some other point of time. And this is private information. They think that it has a lot of value. And I think, eventually some decisions can be right, some can be wrong. For example, Tata Motors' decision to take Land Rover and Jaguar turned out to be really good. Whereas Tata Steel taking over Chorus has been a very bad decision. But financing has been done mainly by Tata Group companies as a private placement. This doesn't happen in the US because US companies are not owned by any families. They're like, highly diluted public listed companies. So managers will not have deep pockets like the managers in India. Hence, private placements in the US are different from the private placements in India. So you need this kind of arguments to write a research paper, right? So you have to first establish that Indian market is quite different from the US market. And if you conduct private placement research, you might reach totally new conclusions. And that's important for the literature to know that private placements in countries with a different organization structure are different compared to the countries with another set of organization structure, so that you're adding to the literature there. There is a new conclusion happening, right? So mere replication of facts or information from one location to the other location is not research, unless you justify that such replication has a lot of value, right? So research is not merely rummaging of information. So, just, turning out so many tables, graphs, and providing a lot of information is not research. Research is not a catchword used to get attention. Like, you see that most of the people nowadays are doing research on COVID because that's a hot topic, right? So, and I think, just to get attention, if you do something quick, that's not research again, right? So it's important for us to know what is research and what is not research. Now, the next one is what are the types of research we engage in, right? So research can be classified into, three kinds of perspectives based on application, objectives, and types of information or evidence that you need to conduct research. Application-wise, the research is normally divided into pure research and applied research. most of the research that we do is all applied. Social sciences is an applied area altogether. Finance, for example, is 100% applied research. Pure research is, I think, you extend the same body of knowledge like mathematics, some areas of maths, languages, you conduct pure research. Objectives. So you can divide research based on objective. This is important for us. So the research can be descriptive or exploratory or explanatory. So when we say descriptive research, the question we try to answer is mainly what. Exploratory research, the main question we answer is how. And explanatory, the question we answer is why. Right. So, you're trying to do research, for example. Let's take the same private placements example, just to continue. So what is descriptive research in private placements paper?
What type of, what is the amount of private placements done in the past 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. What is the amount of private placement that happened? What are the differences in the organizational structure of India and US? How Indian market? No, not how. I think what changes have happened in India and in the US. So all this kind of research that we do is descriptive. Now, exploratory is how. Let's try to answer some exploratory questions. Let's try to frame some exploratory questions. Sorry.
Maybe who are the buyers in that private placements?
See, who are the buyers is descriptive.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Whether this can be framed like this, sir. What happened after private placement to the stock price?
What happened? Yes. Before and after. Yes. How things have changed. That is exploratory. Yeah, that can be definitely exploratory. Yeah. So that can be exploratory. What is explanatory? Explanatory question. Yeah, someone typed here. How does private placement impact the investors? Yes, that's a good, exploratory question. Now, explanatory.
Can we frame like whether company performance is better after private placement or something?
No, explanatory is always why. See, explanatory, the question is cause and effect. There is some cause and there is an effect.
I think Dr. Rajesh Kumar has something on the chat box.
Yeah. Why should companies resort to private placements when there are other sources of funding? Yeah, that's a good question. But in this context, the main question we are trying to answer is why private placements in the US are not successful and why they're successful in India. So there is a cause and there is an effect for that, right? The cause is organized structure. And you're hypothesizing that the organized structure explains the success of private placements. That's your hypothesis, right? So that's how you're trying to frame, because you have established with a logical argument saying that the organized structure plays a big role in financing options. And there are some theories that support that. You have pecking order theory, for example, right? So you have so many theories that explain this. And there are some other theories. There is a famous paper by Myers and Majloof. That's a very famous paper that has a theory again to explain how companies fund their projects. So there are so many theories that shows and that makes you to come out with a hypothesis saying that organization structure is the cause for the success of a private placement. So the question behind that is why private placements are different in the US compared to India, right? And that's your question. You start your research on that and you frame a hypothesis like this, then you test it, right? So you take some data You take organizational structure data and you take private placement success level data, and you try to run some regressions to establish cause and effect relationships, right? So that's how you undertake this process of research. So among the three questions, descriptive, exploratory, and explanatory, which questions are most important questions for researchers? Which questions lead to new conclusions? Why questions? Yeah, or explanatory questions. So when you are doing research of good quality, why questions are very important, because you have to establish some cause and some effect, right? So that you can do through explanatory research. But does it mean that descriptive and exploratory research are not important? Yeah, they are supporting. Yeah, Bhanuchandar, I think. So they, first, when you do a research work, first you always start with descriptive research. Then you have to do exploratory research, followed by explanatory research. All three should be there in a paper. So you need to follow all the three processes. But the highest weightage is for explanatory research. That's where you test your hypothesis, right? So these are research types based on objectives. Then you have research types based on information or evidence. So you can divide research into quantitative research or qualitative research. What kind of research we normally do in finance?
Mostly quantitative.
Yeah, most of the time we do quantitative research, and I think I see a huge culture in the Indian universities where students engage in qualitative research, doing surveys, which is a good thing. But I think that's not sufficient for a good quality research work. So I think students keep on engaging in primary data collection, going around and then doing surveys and then coming out with something. I think that doesn't help in publications in a long way. So now we are trying to have a summary of what we discussed about research and the research process. So research always originates with a question or a problem. And research requires a clear articulation of a goal. So in the introduction section, you write what exactly is the purpose of this paper. Research follows a specific plan of procedure, right? So you have a clear a plan articulated at the end of the introduction section, exactly what you're doing. Research usually divides the principal problem into more manageable subproblems. So you have a problem, and you try to decipher or try to make it smaller pieces so that you can investigate much more in a robust way in research. Research is guided by a specific research problem, question, or a hypothesis. So you always use your hypothesis to guide your research, which is based on some logical argument that you have developed. Research accepts certain critical assumptions, very important. I think this ultimately is the research, with a lot of limitations. So it's important that we have to accept that the research has some assumptions. Research requires collection and interpretation of data in an attempt to resolve the problem that initiated research. So you need materials and sources. And research, keep in mind, is always cyclical. So there is no end, a real definitive end of answering a problem or a question. Like, people have got Nobel Prizes for doing their research work. It doesn't mean that that question has stopped there. In other words, a Nobel Prize did not let to provide the 100% answer to that question. People have done a lot of work after getting Nobel Prize in the same area too. Like people got a Nobel Prize for Gauss model, but you know that how much research happened after Arch and Gauss. People got Nobel Prize for Markowitz theory. People got Nobel Prize for Kaplan-Meier pricing model, and people got Nobel Prize for options pricing. right? So doesn't mean that we are there right now. We are much ahead of what they have done, right? So I think that's where I think you need to ensure that research is always cyclical. So it keeps on revolving and then trying to pull out some new conclusions all the time, right? So that's the research process. Now we're trying to dig more about a question. What is a question in research? Do you want to take a break or?
It's okay, sir. I think we can continue, sir.
We can continue.
It's
I'll
okay.
just have a small glass of water and continue.
Sure, sir.
Okay, I'm back. So what are the questions we normally ask in research? I think let's see, I think what are the questions we normally ask in research? Most of the questions we ask in research in our area, at least in finance, is made out of these 4 P's. It could be a question on people, on problems, programs, or phenomena. People, I think we have a lot of research questions based on people. Like, questions connected to managers, directors, CEOs, employees, investors, right? So we have so many questions connected with individuals like this, and also organizations. So people here implies even organizations and groups. So organizations could be, something like stock markets, corporate entities, right? So we have questions connected to those things. Or it could be groups also, like a group of investors, a group of mutual fund managers, etc. Group of brokers. It could be on problems. Research should be, can be on problems too, like issues, situations. So issues, so we might be facing some issues. For example, one major issue where people have done research is commission paid to financial advisors. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? That's an issue because I think commissions can, make, to give biased advice. Whichever, say, mutual fund pays the financial advisors more commissions, they try to promote their products, for example. Right. So situations. Sometimes research can be on a particular situation. Right. So it could be a situation that we are facing right now. So COVID is a situation, right? So likewise, programs. It could be based on programs. It could be like things something to do with structures, outcomes, attributes. Set up by a government. So government might come out with some expected outcomes. So they will have a regulation to have certain outcomes. That they would like to see. For example, distributing say bicycles for girl children in the rural areas to make sure that girl children can attend school. They'll not drop out from school, right? So that's a program set up by the government. And you want to see whether that program is really successful or not. Can you replicate that program elsewhere too, right? So, etc. Phenomena. Phenomena is something like global financial crisis. That's a phenomenon. And you want to know what are the causes of a crisis and what's the effect of the crisis. So you can have all possible questions that you come across in research will be among these 4 Ps, in finance at least. So how do you select a problem to do research? So how do you come out with a problem for doing research? The first important thing is when you want to undertake research, you should be really interested in that problem. So you think you should be excited to undertake research in that area. So if you're not excited, if you don't think that is of your interest, I think it's very difficult to motivate you to undertake research. So make sure that you're highly excited to undertake research on that particular problem or question. Then the second thing is you should have expertise in trying to answer that question. So you should have done enough research in terms of reading literature, understanding literature, critically assessing literature. In case if you're early career researcher, then you should have a team where you have senior researchers who are experts in that area. And normally when you start your career, you always have that kind of mechanism. You have some mentors who are experts in that area. I had a very good mentor when I started my research by name Professor Marty Subramaniam. So Marty Subramaniam is a well-known authority in finance, a professor at New York University, and he mentored me quite well in my initial stages. So he was an expert in some areas, and I was mainly assisting him, and that's how I undertook research, right? So you can have your supervisors too, likewise. And the third most important thing is relevance. Whatever you do as research, it has to be relevant to the world, right? So it should not be something in thin air, right? So there should be a lot of relevance to that should make sense. They should have impact. See, nowadays, universities in Europe, they're not really looking at the quality of journal publications anymore. Like, if you say that I published in the top journal in finance, they don't care about it. That they've come out of that, game. Now, European universities want researchers to prove that no matter where you publish, it doesn't matter. Show us what is the impact of your research, right? How much impact your research has created? Who are using it? Who benefited from it? So this kind of narrative you have to give and justify that for promotions or for salary rise, bonuses, etc. in Europe right now. So it's important that whatever topic you pick has to be relevant. There should be some impact by doing the research in that topic. The fourth one is availability of data and evidence. That's more practical one to look at. You can have great ideas and get great things to do. For example, a lot of people nowadays, they would like to do a lot of research on cryptocurrencies. They want to do something on NFTs. But the research data availability is a big shortage in that area right now. We don't have data over the last 10 years right now. We have data only for 2-3 years at the moment. So you need to ensure that, is that data sufficient for your research? Do you have sufficient data? Is that data credible? Is it clean? Right? So, etc. You have to make sure that that's a very practical way of looking at research. The last one is ethical issues, which are important in some research areas. I think especially if you're running surveys, running experiments, which we do sometimes, where I think you need to get ethical approval. A lot of journals will not accept your paper without submitting ethical approval document by ethics committee of the university. Universities have their own ethics committee, and you have to make a presentation in the ethics committee, and they have to be satisfied. Then they will issue a ethics committee report saying that you can go and do research. And only then you can do research, especially if you're dealing with humans, where you have to meet people. So you have to protect their privacy, etc., all those things. And so hence I think ethical approval becomes very important. And ethics can also be in the direction that whatever research you do, you have to be very honest. You should not manipulate. So the data or anything to get whatever desired results you want. So you should not do that. What is a goal in research, right? So goal is a clear, ambiguous statement of the problem. it's very important to have that. So a lot of times, when you send your paper to a journal, the editor reads the abstract. By reading the abstract, the editor will know whether that paper is a good paper or a bad paper. Let's assume the paper is a okay paper. Then the editor will read the introduction, the first paragraph of introduction. If they do not see what is the goal of this paper, then I think, there is 90% chance that the paper will get rejected. And there is around 60 to 70% chance that your paper will get rejected if the abstract is not written properly. Because the editor will not have time to go through the whole paper. They have to find the right referee or reviewer to your paper, and they have to take a call. Is it worth the referee time to send the paper? If they think in their opinion that it's not worth the time to send the paper to the referee, then I think they will desk reject the paper, saying that, no, this paper is not worth considering for our journal. This can happen. Desk rejections happen a lot in journals, right? So it's important that you state your abstract and goal very clearly, because these are the first two things happen when you start reading the paper for any one who would like to read your paper. And whatever statement you make, it has to have a lot of intellectual honesty. What is intellectual honesty? So it has to say that how much you know and how genuinely you know something. That's intellectual honesty. And it should not be vague. It has to be clear, grammatically also complete, and it has to be precise, right? What precisely do you intend to do in this research, right? So you have to be very clear on that. Then you should have a plan, right? So it's not an excursion thing, you don't have a happy ending for research, it can be anything, right? And you have to ensure that you have proper plan. See, most of the times your research acceptance is not based on your results. It's all based on how you executed the problem, no matter what the result you got, right? So for that, you need proper planning. And all research will have a problem and also sub-problems to manage research well. And more importantly, research will have a hypothesis. Right. So you need a construct, you need a logical supposition, a reasonable guess, an educated conjecture. And this is where you contribute to the literature. This is where you show your intellectual ability, coming out with the right hypothesis. Right. So it's so important. I would like to stress this, that developing the hypothesis is everything about the research paper. Then if there are any assumptions, you have to state the assumptions. And data, you have to be very clear what data you've got, and whether the data needs any interpretation. You have to have data dictionary if that is needed in your paper. And research has to be cyclical all the time. Okay, so now I will show you how abstracts have to be written. Can you see this on my screen now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, you see Journal of Banking and Finance? What do you see on the screen? What is visible on the screen?
It's cyclical, sir. Research follows a pattern.
Oh, okay, I think I have to stop sharing. I have to share again. 1 second, hold on. What do you see now?
Journal of Banking and Finance, sir.
Yeah, okay. So the right screen. So I'll just give a small demo on how to write an abstract to start with. This is a paper that I published some time back with my co-authors in a journal called as Journal of Banking and Finance, which is a very highly ranked ESR journal in finance. Now, I want you to look at the abstract. I'll make it a bit bigger. I don't know how I can reduce all these things. 1 second. No. How can I need to minimize this. Is this something you can read?
Yes,
Can
sir.
you, okay.
Are price limits really bad for equity markets, sir?
Yeah, that is the question we ask. Do you all know what are price limits? In stock markets.
The extent to which the stock price can fluctuate in a day.
Right. That's right. I think so. Normally, let's assume there is a price limit for a stock saying plus or minus 10%. It means that you can trade within that zone. You can't place an order and you can't execute an order which is beyond that plus or minus 10% for that day. Right. So, and a lot of stock exchanges impose price limits. And in India also, we have price limits, especially for those stocks that do not have derivative contracts. And I think you have limits in Japanese or Tokyo Stock Exchange or Bangladesh Stock Exchange, or many stock exchanges have price limits. At the same time, there are many stock exchanges that do not have price limits. So that gives a kind of question to you: why some stock exchanges have price limits, and why some stock exchanges do not have price limits? Are they a good thing or a bad thing? Do you need to have price limits or not? Now you go back and see literature and see whether people have done any research in this area. And you do find some papers where people looked at price limits. And I looked at many papers that have done on price limits, and I found that majority of the papers, in fact, almost all the papers have shown that price limits are bad. Right. So the hypothesis based on finance theory again is that if you put a price limit, then you won't have efficient prices. Price is not discovered efficiently. Let's assume there is a company that announces that I think they got very high profits, and you expect that the stock price should go up by 13%. But on that day of announcement, the stock price can go only by 10%. It won't reach its new equilibrium of 12% rise. Now, that's a very efficient way of running a stock market, right? So that's the argument people have come out, and then they have shown that. But the counter argument to that is if people manipulate markets, which can happen, which happened in India many times. You do something like a pumping and dumping scheme. Then there is a possibility that the stock price can go up beyond 10% limit, and eventually that get dumped, right? So by the manipulators, and a lot of people lose money. Right? So you have both sides of the coin. So on one side, price limits causes inefficient price discovery. On the other hand, price limit can avoid manipulations. So there are two sides of argument to that. And research, wherever I read, they found that price limits are bad. Now, the question I got is, if price limits are really bad, then why do stock exchanges have them? Right? And that's how you start your research. That's called as motivating yourself. Right? You want to know, because I think you want to know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Are they really bad? Is the question you want to answer. Now, that's the question we pose in this paper. And you look at the abstract here. The first sentence of the abstract, I will read. Despite widely documented criticisms, price limit rules are present in many equity markets around the world. What is that sentence saying? What is that sentence trying to say?
It's trying to set the context for my research.
Yeah. So, but why I make that statement? What is it? What is the important thing about that context? Yeah. Well-documented criticisms. Yeah. So let me ask you a question. What is the most important word in that sentence?
That is, the price limits are present.
No, see, everyone knows they're present. It's not that important.
Criticism.
No, criticism is there in the literature.
Despite.
Despite. Despite is the most important word in that sentence. Why we start the abstract with the word despite?
I'm doubtful of the criticism.
You're doubtful of that, right? Why you're doubtful? Do you have any evidence to show that you're doubtful? You're not doubtful, just you're not speculating there. You're doubtful because of a good reason. What is a good reason for you to be doubtful?
Because it is being implemented by stock exchanges.
It is there. So this kind of a statement is called as counterintuitive statement. Okay. It is against the intuition. Intuition says that they should not be, but stock exchanges have them. So it's always good to start a research with a counterintuitive statement. See, that will attract the attention of the reader. People will think, yes, I think, it makes sense. Well, why stock exchanges imposing limits when they're bad, right? So you always start with a sentence like that in the abstract. And what is this sentence in terms of research? Is it research? What part of research this belongs to?
Explanatory.
Yeah, why? Directly you want to ask the question, why? Yeah, I think someone is typing also. Yeah, it leads you to know why. Yeah. So why is the most important thing here? So is there a research question within it? Is research question embedded in that sentence?
Yes, sir.
It is there. Is research motivation embedded in the sentence?
Yes, sir.
It is there, right? See, I'm using only one sentence that, yeah, yes, sir. Yeah. So that is having research question and also research motivation. At the same time, it is counterintuitive, right? So when you start research, it's important that you pose a question this way with a sentence, with a word like despite. Right? Now, let's look at the second sentence. Using a game theoretic model, we argue that if the cost of monitoring a market is high, price limit rules are beneficial. Using a game theoretic model, we argue that if the cost of monitoring market is high, price limit rules are beneficial. Right? What is this sentence about? What is the most important word in that sentence?
Cost of monitoring.
No. Someone is typing. Yeah, I think Rajesh Kumar, you're right. We argue that. Rajesh Kumar, why we argue it's the most important part of that sentence? Yeah, Pradeep also says argue. Why argue is the most important word in that sentence? Someone is typing. Yeah, that indicates your perspective, not just your perspective. You are using a method, systematic investigation. What is the systematic investigation there? How are you saying that you are systematically investigating? Yeah, you're using game theory model, right? Game theory model is systematic investigation. It has a lot of math in it, right? So you're using a systematic investigation and making an argument. So what is this in research? Is this hypothesis?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Kalyan Kumar, it is hypothesis. You said no, it is the hypothesis. See, you look at this now. I'll try to combine these two sentences again. The first sentence is asking a question. The second sentence is answering the question, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. And that's how you need to structure it. Okay. First sentence, you pose a question. Why price limits should be there if they're bad? Then the answer for that is, okay, if the cost of monitoring is very high. In other words, if regulators have to monitor a lot because there are so many manipulators in the market, then they're better off having price limits, although they're, in other words, it's better to operate in suboptimal environment. You don't have to operate in optimal environment because the cost of monitoring is higher than the benefit of not having price limits. Right? You're giving an argument saying that. So that's your answer to the question. So you have a question, there is an answer. Now let's look at the third sentence. Empirical tests based on a cross-section of 43 equity markets across 5 continents supports our theoretical prediction. What is this sentence?
We are using data to support our theoretical.
To support your hypothesis,
Yes,
you are
sir.
validating. See, you got satisfied with your answer, the second sentence, but you have to satisfy everyone who's reading it. For that, you have to validate by doing some empirical investigation. Right? So that's your result. That's the results are validating that your hypothesis is true. Followed by that, you have the next one. We find that the probability of existence of price limit rules is greater in markets that incur higher monitoring costs. That's supporting your hypothesis. Due to poorer business disclosures, more corruption, less efficiency in legal, regulatory, and technological environments. So in those markets where disclosure rules are very bad, corruption is more, and legal system is not that well enforceable, in those markets, the probability of having price limits is much higher than in markets that do not have this kind of problems. Like in the US market, London Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, they don't have any price limits. Whereas you come to other markets where there are a lot of manipulations, they tend to have more price limits. Right? Now, what is this sentence? Yeah. It is not just conclusion, it is a new conclusion. Right? You're reaching a new conclusion because no one else has reached that conclusion earlier in the research. People who have done research until then, they did not reach to that conclusion. Right? So if I go back to my slide, I think I know, 1 second, I'll stop sharing this one and I share again. I go here and I go back to my definition of research. Now, the definition of research is saying that it has to be a systematic investigation. Did I do systematic investigation there? Did I tick that box? Right? So yes, I have used game theory. I have used empirical methods that are well established, etc. Did I use materials and sources? I've taken 43 countries. Some have price limits, some do not have price limits. Did I establish facts? Yeah, I've taken a lot of data and I got some results which are, objective. They're facts. The numbers are facts. Did I reach new conclusion? Yes, I did reach new conclusion. Right. So I achieved all that directly in the abstract itself. So when the editor looks at the paper, they'll make a judgment on how the paper is going to be by looking at the abstract. So your chances of getting paper accepted just by looking at that, are very, very high. In fact, this paper got accepted with no revision. And I think it got accepted within a month. Normally, in a SR journal, a paper takes about 1 year to 3 years based on the journal. So this paper got in quickly purely because of the clarity and what we are bringing to the table, right? So that's kind of an idea of how to do research and how to structure your paper. I think we are almost end of my talk time. Dhananjay, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I think it's 7:27 Indian time right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So any questions? Any questions, please? I'm happy to take some questions.
Madam, Josna, madam, can you take screenshot? I request all the participants to have their videos on and pose any questions to Professor Vijay Bhaskar Marshit, sir. I request the participants to have their video on so that we have a screenshot with the professor.
Any questions?
Request any questions from the participants?
Which finance journals can we from India aim to begin with, sir? So from Rajesh Kumar. So I would suggest you focus on journals that are more, biased towards Indian content. They want more papers from India. One journal which is of high quality in this region is Pacific Basin Finance Journal. So if you have a good, decent paper on India, you have very high chance of getting in Pacific Basin Finance. It's A in the ABDC ranking. It is A journal. But if you have better quality than that, I think I would suggest it doesn't matter which journal. You can go to the top journals too, A-star journals too.
I request the participants to switch on their videos so that we have a screenshot. Sir, I'm very happy to report that we have very good friends here. Dr. Pradeep Mamgain.
Ah, yes,
He lives
yes.
in a very,
Pradeep. He was there in one of the workshops in Hyderabad.
Oh, great, sir. Great. Because why I mentioned him is it is a highly, nature. His place is.
Yes, yes.
You very much like his place.
Yeah. In fact, I'm waiting for his invitation to visit his place.
Pradeep, sir. Pradeep Mamgain, sir, please respond to sir question.
Oh, I think, Rajesh Kumar attended IIM Indore workshop also. Yeah, great.
Pradeep, sir.
Sure, sir. Good evening, all.
Good evening. Yes.
Sure, sir. Whenever we will get the opportunity or the time comes, then sure, sir, we will be inviting you physically. Basically, from 2 years, we are going for a webinar only.
Right. I know. I totally understand. I was just, but you live in a beautiful location. That's, a place to visit. Yeah.
But soon we will be we'll be making some arrangement for seminars.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I know Professor Vijay Bhaskar sir is very much a nature lover, and his paintings and the way of blending with nature, you can see when you follow his social media. And you are the right person, I think, to host Professor Vijay Bhaskar Marchet sir.
Sure.
Any other questions or suggestions or observations, feedback from the
I think
participants?
feedback is important. Yes.
Sir, I want to say one thing that this, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Dhananjay, Dr. Dhananjay, regarding this conduct of this webinar, because this specialized webinar on the finance, this is very rare. I mean, we are not finding, at least. So first of all, I thank to Professor Dhananjay on this, and also, sir, I thankful to Professor Vijay sir regarding that he gave his valuable time. At least I learned many things, though the questions are many, but in this short time, it is not possible to ask all these questions, but at least I am enlightened by your talk, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to know that.
Any other one more participant? I think many people have given the chat box, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Actually, your final word, sir, the final word, then I will go just have a vote of thanks, sir.
No, I think it's
final word from.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to participate anything that can promote research in the Indian universities, because we really need good researchers. We have to, increase. We have to, place the bar a bit higher than what we are doing right now. I think any contribution from my side, I'm always happy to participate. And I thank Dr. Dhananjay for inviting me, and I'm so glad that I'm here today. Thank you.
Sir, is really a blessing for all the finance teachers.
Thank you. So I think we're closing it here.
Really, sir, we are blessed to have you here, and the way you have explained things, and a great teacher simplifies. So the way your vast knowledge is spanning across various financial markets, analytics, and microfinance, and fintech, blockchain, the enormous variety of your diversity of your interests, and the depth of the knowledge you have conveyed with such a simple words. And we are very much absorbed. But I felt like a MBA student, fresh finance teacher. The type of
Yeah, I think your voice got jammed.
That's it's a bit much, and I can go on till even one day also, and because every day good things will coming to an end. But I have listened to you one whole day without losing any enthusiasm in IIM Indore.
Right.
That's the way you make the subject very interesting and simplified. And I can say that something the participants find flow in your presentation, sir. And as your paintings and all these things, where you paint the gardens, if you go to a flower garden, we can't pluck all the flowers, but the fragrance remains with us. So we have taken some fragrance from the flower garden of Professor Vijay Bhaskar Marchet sir, knowledge and wisdom and his enthusiasm and the way he simplifies the things. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
We're
Thanks.
blessed to have you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.